My mindset was always to make what I felt was the best decision for the kids. And, they were most comfortable staying in the home. And so I knew that they were going to be well taken care of. And they didn't quite understand it at first.
Welcome to the Masterful Man podcast. I'm your host, Sven Masterson, coach, mentor, author, and fellow traveler on the path to mastery. Every man reaches a point where he knows he can't keep living the way he has been. The question is, what comes next? Here, you'll hear from men who've made the shift, men who've gone from stuck to unstuck, unshakable, and unstoppable. If you're ready to start moving forward, you're in the right place. In today's episode, I'm sitting down with Andrew, a father of four who found himself blindsided by divorce after 16 years of marriage. But instead of becoming bitter or broken, he chose a different path, one of deep self-work, transformation, and acceptance. We dive into his journey from self-sacrifice and resentment to genuine confidence and peace, even while co-parenting across the street from his former home. If you've ever wondered how to rebuild after loss and come out stronger, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Thank you for being our guest today, or my guest today on the Masterful Man podcast. I appreciate your willingness to tell your story to the world. How you feeling about that?
I feel good. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, that's good. Nervous at all? A lot of men, kind of have a little bit.
But, excited also.
Yeah. Well, I'll be easy on you. Why don't you start by telling us, the basic demographics that we like to start out with. You don't have to be too precise, but, first name, where you are, roughly what part of the world, marital status, age range, this kind of thing. Maybe what you do as a vocation.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Andrew. I'm divorced. I've got 4 daughters, and I'm 45 years old. I live in Kentucky, and I teach chemistry. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just for our listeners, can you give us an approximate age range of your daughters? Like, are they out of the house? Are they grown adults? Or as 45-year-old, probably not.
Nah, not yet. Not yet. So I have 4 daughters. The oldest is 16. Or almost 16, I should say that. Like next week, she'll be 16. I have a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old.
Okay, wow, yes, so 6 to 16. All right.
So I've got a large range. Yeah, like high school to elementary.
Okay. And how long have you been divorced?
It's been almost 3 years now.
Okay, wow. Yeah. And how long ago did that process start for you?
That was in August of, what was the year? I can't remember the year.
Yeah, so some time ago. Yeah. I think when I met you, I was talking to my family about, hey, I need to go out to my office and do this podcast episode. And they asked me, because they know so many of you guys, who are you talking to today? And I told them. And then I said, I'm really excited about this one because I haven't had a man on yet whose story ended in divorce. And I was also trying to remember how long I've known you, whatnot. And I can't remember, forgive me, because I know I've said this before, but I don't remember if you were divorced when I met you, or you're just close to it. Like, you're pretty healthily in the process, I believe.
Yeah, our first call was about 3 years ago now. So I think I got divorced in 2022 in May. And our first call, I think, was February or March of the same year. So
okay.
So the process had started the first time when I talked to you.
Yeah. And I don't always remember those conversations in great detail. Now I have some pretty fantastic note taking to remind me of some things.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that stood out to me is that it seemed like, if I recall correctly, you were much more focused in that call and even reaching out on your relationship with yourself. It seemed like you'd already kind of come to some conclusions that like, hey, I've got to do something about me, which is really unusual and really mature. Most people are desperately trying to save a marriage. But I always remember that and have had a lot of admiration for you since then about that. But maybe I'm remembering it correctly. I don't know. Were you panically trying to save your marriage? Did I just forget?
No, you're right. No, I came to you at a time when I had accepted that the marriage was going to end, and I was looking to just do something different, and I wanted to work on myself. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Some people have a really mature perspective when they are in a crisis like this. Like they realize, this is an opportunity for me to look at me.
Yeah.
Which is very healthy because, you know as well as I do how many people go down another path. I usually say there's two paths you can go to. You could become a victor or you could become a villain. And a victor says, like, how do I turn this situation around into the maximum fruitfulness given its pretty shitty circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where a villain is saying, I don't know what to do with my pain. How can I inflict maximum damage? I mean,
Right.
They're not really saying that, but that's what ends up happening. So, yeah, super mature perspective. And I know it hasn't always been that way. So what I'm hoping to talk about in today's call is just to show, like, what transpired. And so naturally we'll tell the story of you and kind of what came to pass in, and let's say the last 5 or 6 years. So maybe to set the stage, if you could tell us, well, first of all, how long were you married before all this happened?
When we were divorced, we had been married for 16 years.
Okay.
And it was, now that I'm remembering dates better, I think it was August of 2021. My ex gave me the I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I heard that phrase. Exactly. Yeah. And so right after that, I didn't know what to do. I was in shock. I did not see it coming at all.
All right. So
yeah.
Pause that a minute because I want to get to this, but I want to start even further back at 5 years before that. I mean, you didn't see it coming in August 2021, and I love the tension you just created for us. Like, what? Like, what happened? Yeah. And I can't wait from a storytelling perspective to hear this. But 5 years before that, 11 years into marriage, what was going on? Like, what was your life like? What was working? What was not working? Like, kind of orient us to who you were kind of before all of this crisis happened.
Yeah. So about 5 years ago, I would say I was just existing. I wasn't really living.
Did you know it?
Not at all. No, I wasn't aware of any of that. I would say I was unconscious to the fact that I was just existing.
Do you just know it now by contrast? Like,
yeah.
Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I thinking back that far ago, I can't remember a time when I was like present with anybody.
Yeah. A lot of men I speak with, myself included, they don't even remember 5 years, or when they were in a crisis mode. For me, it was more than 5 years ago, but a lot of us would say, I don't even remember, period, because they were so non-present. And usually it's for some common reasons, but I'm curious, like, what you would say now. Why do you feel like you weren't present 5 years ago?
Wow, that's a good question.
What'd you give your time, energy, and focus to? Let's start there.
I was just trying to make it through the day. It felt like I spent a lot of energy distracting myself, spent a lot of time trying to do things and make other people happy.
Yeah, so just to spell this out a little bit, you weren't some person lounging around on the couch doing nothing. And you're not talking about idleness from what I know about you. You probably, if you're like most men I speak with, would have considered yourself a virtuous, faithful husband and father.
Yeah, exactly.
And so breaking that down a little bit, what did you give your energy to in the pursuit of trying to be a good father and husband and specifically making other people happy? What did that look like?
Yeah, so if there were any complaints about anything, I would say, okay, well, I'm going to give up my time and sacrifice the things that I want to do so that you can be happy, right? I'm trying to think of any specifics. I think in one case, my ex might say something like, wow, I'm just terrible at cooking. And I didn't mind her cooking at all. I was happy if she would do it. But in that, I took it as, okay, well, I guess I'm going to do all the cooking now.
So
things like that.
So for you, if you heard complaints, you heard it as an like, hey, here's something I have to fix.
Right.
About a little bit of rescuer energy in there.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think motivated you at the time? Was it your undying love?
No, it was keeping the peace. Keeping the peace. Yeah.
What's that about? Tell me more.
Yeah. So I guess if I was trying to keep the peace and not rock the boat, then I would get the love that I want from others. Yeah.
So is it fair to say that you wouldn't, in your day-to-day life, busy husband and father, that you didn't feel very loved? Or
no,
that you
actually,
felt like something was missing?
Yeah, I didn't feel whole. I didn't feel full of anything. I never went and tried to, do the things that I thought I wanted to do. One of the things that I do now is like singing, and I'm in a group, and I thought that I couldn't go and do, join a group to sing in, because that would take up too much time away from my family.
Right. Yeah, that kind of putting yourself last. It's this thing that we're taught to do oftentimes where we're in some ways told we're selfish for taking care of ourselves in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. People will acknowledge that you should take care of yourself if you talk about fitness. Like, that's more common now that people say, like, yeah, man, you got to take care of yourself. You got to stay fit and strong. But there's less cultural support for a man and woman actually taking care of their emotional well-being, their overall sense of self and wholeness. It's like people will tell you you're selfish for doing that if you want to take some time and be by yourself, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Or spend resources. That's a big one, right?
Yeah.
And as a dad, you end up kind of putting yourself last in the time and money bucket, it seems like, especially with kids.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I felt I had to take care of them all the time, and I because of that, I was pretty bitter and judgmental towards a lot of people, the people that I love the most sometimes.
Including your wife?
Yeah.
Did you feel like that caused you to keep some records? Like, a lot of men report sort of this tit for tat kind of approach where they start noticing how much she's going out and how much she's getting a manicure or pedicure or spa day. And you're like, but I'm not. You don't see me going to get a massage. Like, this kind of a dynamic emerges a lot where a lot of men feel that way.
Yeah, I did kind of keep those records. And I remember, like, when I was making dinner one time, just making dinner, I'm like, okay, I feel awful, but I'm doing this because I love her. I'm doing this because and it was just awful. It never got better, just acting that way.
Did you have any, and I know you might not have noticed these then, but were there any recurring patterns or maybe warning signs looking back that were present in your relationship with your wife, just related to all this stuff? How was this showing up for you?
I don't know exactly. Like I said, I was so not present that I don't think I even saw the signs. You know, in me, I felt I was never diagnosed, but I felt depressed a lot. And I remember one time saying to her, she asked like how I felt about my job. And I remember saying to her, I'm just going to do my job until I retire. It's not really important to me. And that I'm sure being around me for her was just not a good experience.
Do you feel like you were like mopey and melancholy, sort of that, maybe not to the level of Eeyore, but a lot of men describe themselves that way? Almost like a resignation to, well, I guess this is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, like this is it. This is just how life is going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of us, when we're living in a period like that, are pretty numb, or we're numbing ourselves in some way.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on my phone, just playing games, scrolling social media.
Yeah, just checked out.
And I isolated myself from a lot of people. I thought I had to do it all on my own.
So it doesn't sound like you're living your best life.
Not at all. No, it's pretty miserable.
Is there, like, when you look back from today's understanding, do you ever identify warning signs that you could see were there now when you look, but you didn't see that?
You mean like leading toward divorce?
It could be towards divorce, or even that we're letting you know that you were not living in a way that was really life-giving. We teach ourselves how to ignore a lot of these signs as men. This is one of the challenges. And so sometimes until another man says, that's not how life is supposed to be, you don't realize it because you just think, well, that's just how life is.
Right.
And then you hear maybe a podcast or a video and somebody says that's how their life was and it doesn't have to be that way. And then suddenly you're like, whoa, it doesn't?
Yeah. I don't know. I can't think of anything specific, to be honest.
Yes. Okay. Did you have any recurring hard emotions?
I judged myself a lot. Hard emotions, yeah. Anger. Yeah.
For a lot of men, Andrew, they would report that came out easily with children, not necessarily by being a jerk to your kids, but oftentimes a little bit of emotional reactivity, a short fuse.
Yep.
This kind of thing. Is that what it looks like for you?
I was pretty reactive. Exactly. Okay. Yeah.
How about defensiveness?
Yeah, there was some of that. A lot of more like deflecting, kind of hiding stuff. Yeah,
like things were a little bit uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. I would if I made a mistake, I thought I had to be perfect.
Okay.
And if I made a mistake, I would try my best to just hide that because it wouldn't be good enough.
All right. Now that's interesting because, again, real common, men have this very deep fear of being seen as weak. And so oftentimes what men will do is we'll hide our mistakes. The irony of that is the opposite of vulnerability. And vulnerability is a prerequisite for connection and intimacy.
Exactly.
Because intimacy is all about letting people see you, and it's not letting them see your perfection, but your imperfections. And so oftentimes a man is doing this, and it's creating a life where he doesn't feel very connected and intimate, and he hasn't connected the dots. Well, I'm hiding. And if I'm hiding the true me, he's not seeing that is creating a life of disconnection and a lack of intimacy. Most oftentimes, and I'm not trying to put you in an uncomfortable spot here, but most often when a man is living like that, he's woefully disappointed in his sex life, and oftentimes then secretly fantasizing or has something where he's yearning for more, but he also can't admit that.
It feels pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm always saying that as a man who knows this, by the way, myself. This is kind of a common challenge, is like we're working against our own demise. or we're working towards our own demise by being this way, and we're creating the very thing we don't want. But we think she's creating the disconnection. She's creating a lack of intimacy, not realizing, hey, I'm the one that's covering up all of my flaws, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
And people would tell me, they're like, "Oh yeah, you're a great dad and husband."
I was
and,
just going to ask you this.
and all that. And so I got a lot out of that validation. And so I thought I had to keep being perfect.
Yeah.
To get that.
You felt like a good father and husband.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what criteria back then? Because this is
just what other people said.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how would you have defined good husband and father back?
Somebody who is faithful. All right. Somebody who provides. And to be a good father, I would say somebody who's just around and with their kids. Now, I was there with my kids and I was taking care of them, but I was not there mentally.
Yeah.
In my thoughts.
Yeah, there's a common thread too, and boy, some guys get really angry with me, with my stuff, because I challenge this idea. What most men define as good is just minimum requirements for being a decent employed adult male.
Yeah.
Like even if you weren't married, it would be generally considered to be like, to be a responsible adult, you need to have a job. You need to not hit people. You need to not be vulgar, coarse, or addicted. And so a lot of times men just have this thing that they feel entitled to an awesome relationship and life, even though they're basically C average in the realm of men. And again, people get really angry with me for saying this, but I live the same way too, right? Like I had never called Zelda. I still haven't. I have never called her a bad word.
Me too.
In my life. And I used to walk around like some sort of champion of, virtue, because I had never called her something like this. But, I tell people all the time, at the same time, I spent about half of our marriage probably wishing she'd die in her sleep. And in my own hubris, I had thought, well, I never called her a name, so I'm a good husband and a good father, right? But we have all these kind of blind spots sometimes. So, and I just want to draw that out, because sometimes when a man listens to a conversation like this, it might not be apparent like that you're that upstanding citizen, the leader in your community, someone people look at and say like, yeah, that's a good guy. That's a good man. And you felt like one. I felt like one. But then come to find out, our wives don't see it that way. And so a lot of men then turn that around into like, well, she's an ungrateful bitch. She should be happy to have me as a partner. But then when you grow a little bit and we find out your story, we find out actually you were hiding. You had a secret you didn't let her see. You didn't feel present with yourself, right? And so even in hindsight, living your C average life, right? And I'm not talking about by performance and success. Notice we didn't talk about money and career and do you have six-pack abs. We're talking about your relationship with yourself with C average at best.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Just want to draw that home, not so much for you, but for our listener, because there's a huge disconnect in the hearts of most men about what life is.
Yeah.
And we have such a poor definition of it that we routinely encourage men to the bare minimum instead of being our best. And I would suggest we have a culture to show for this. And I don't mean politics or whatever, but just like, I don't think we see a world where men are thriving and deeply engaged as far as the majority. Absolutely, there's men out there that are. But what most men report is an experience like you just share and like I've experienced too.
Right. Yeah, the bar is pretty low.
Yeah.
In, out there.
Yeah, pretty much. If I don't hit her, and I put food on the table and I get up and go to work all the time and I do honey-do tasks when she asks me.
Yeah,
right? It's kind of that happy wife, happy life doctrine.
I heard that.
Yeah. Well, that's how we were educated, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So then, yeah, one day in August, you get smacked upside the head with this noose. Tell us that story. Just tell us a little bit about what you remember from that moment.
Yeah, so when I heard that news, I was, like I said, I was shocked. I did not see that coming because, I'm a good guy.
Yeah.
I'm a good husband, good father. And
how did it happen? Set it up for us a little bit. Just an
okay.
average day or what?
She tried her best. She had a neighbor take the girls, overnight. And so, because she wanted to have some privacy with this and give me time to process what was happening. And it was just one morning, the following morning, she had just told me after breakfast.
Like she just looked at you and said, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you."
Yeah.
Was there a therefore? Like, did she have something? Like, did she have a next steps that she was thinking about, or?
No, that was pretty much it. I don't know what was going on in her head. Like maybe she had some other stuff that she was going to say, but then she just left it at that. So after that, yeah, like I said, I was like shocked and numb. I didn't know what was going on. And later that evening, I started, like a lot of guys, doing an internet search. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was gonna sort of be my next line of questioning is, what did you try? What did you do? What were your first steps?
So yeah, I started diving into what was available, what's out there for a guy like me who his wife said these words to him. And I found a Facebook group, and soon after that, I joined that. I found some reading materials. One of them is Steve Horseman's book.
Okay.
Yeah, I found that.
The what is that? The Tools. What is the name of that book?
Yeah.
For Desperate Husbands or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Was that Peace and Control or the group you were in?
Yep, it was Peace and Control.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is Stephen. What's his name? I don't remember off the top.
I don't remember his name.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've had a lot of people come to me from Peace and Control, and I didn't realize that you were one of those.
Yeah.
Uncomfortably so at first, actually, because there was a big wave a number of years ago where people were coming. And I don't know, that always feels a little bit strange realizing, well, there's this person over there doing something. And
yeah,
I try to put myself in that boat too. Like, well, what if a bunch of people suddenly left my stuff,
Right.
Anyhow, yeah, I didn't realize that was, I'm sure you've probably told me that before, but I didn't realize that was you.
Yeah, that's all right. So I found the group useful.
Everybody says that.
Yeah, it was useful for when I was in there. It's all about separation.
Mm-hmm.
So dealing with that.
Maybe you could talk about some of the stuff you learned in Stephen's group, because I do help a lot of people in that scenario, but that's not my story. And so I don't help as many people as other people do, meaning so many men that have come my way from Peace and Control and is it Husband Help Haven?
Husband Help Haven, yeah.
His name is going to pop out to me in a minute. But so many people have always said they have really found his material helpful. And I'm wondering, because it's not my core competency, if you could share, like, what were the things you learned in his group and whatnot that really helped you navigate those early days of, a woman who says she needs space, or I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Because, I have my own approach, but I don't know what his are.
Right. If I can remember correctly, the main thing that I took away from it was what was called the let her go mindset.
Okay.
And that was, you want to work on yourself to the point where you're okay if she leaves. Yeah. I feel like that's the main concept for the whole thing.
All right. So it sounds like he encouraged you to stop looking at her for what's next, right? Yeah, I would be very similar.
I mean, there were some strategies to like how to deal with, these certain scenarios, things that come up.
Like living arrangements and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that. Exactly. Yeah. Like what happens if she brings up divorce? Like, what do you do? Yeah.
Right. Okay. And tell us how that unfolded. Like, what were the first 2 months like after this? And like, how did you get from there to divorce?
Okay.
What kind of time was involved and maybe the milestones?
Yeah. So I found that, and then I just dove into all of the, the information that I could find, just voraciously reading, and going into that course through the Facebook group. And at the same time, I feel like it was really helpful to connect with other guys going through the same thing. I think that was probably the biggest thing that I took away from that group.
Was just connection with other men in the same boat. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the thing that helped me the most. Just, asking other guys what were their experiences, and even sharing my own eventually, right? Helping other new guys coming in, that helped me a lot too.
Yeah. So you must have been there a little while then, it sounds like.
Yeah. At that point, what my goal at the time was to save the marriage. I know the message in there wasn't really surrounding that. Like he wants to help guys keep their marriages, of course, right? But that wasn't really the path to it, right? It's not just like do this and you'll save your marriage, right?
Right. Yeah. One of the challenges, and I'm sure if he and I had a conversation, we would be able to commiserate with each other, is no matter how much you tell a man the goal is not to save his marriage, he'll look at you with almost a little bit of a wink, be like, yeah, but we really want to save the marriage. So
that's really why we're here.
It's difficult to talk about because I struggle with this every day. So I help, like I said, a lot of guys in this boat. Mm-hmm. And the paradox is if you try to save your marriage, you're almost certain to lose it.
Exactly.
Unless you strong arm and manipulate a woman into staying. And even then, I would say you're maybe securing yourself a little bit of extra time, but you're actually eroding trust. So it comes back with a vengeance. So we tell a man, like, you've got to let that go. But then he starts to hear everything else is still ultimately a way to get the marriage back. So I have to let go to get it back, right? And it's like, well, now you're being semantically accurate, but you're still missing the point. Like, the point is to really become a kind of man who does not need to be married.
Exactly.
And you can't fake that, which is what a lot of men try to do. They try to look like a man who's okay if he's not married, but secretly they want to stay married. And yeah, that fails.
Yeah. Some of it was fake it until you make it kind of deal.
Yeah, it's one of the worst pieces of advice I think you could give a man. I like to say that's faking it till you break it. And that's pretty much what happens. Women are way too intuitive to fool that way, first of all. But secondly, I think there's something bigger at work in our life that is preventing us from getting what we think we want because it's not really what we need. So should you manage to fake it back into a place of being okay, you're just delaying your maturity as a man. That's the sadness about it is if a man desperate to save his marriage, despite the reasons he tells himself he's trying to, is a man that does not know how to be okay without her. And so that's perilous to be in that spot as a man. It is to stunt your own growth. And fortunately, most women in today's day and age are not willing to play that game. Maybe in the past, the laws made it hard for her to leave. And so a lot of guys bemoan that, oh, the legal system makes it so easy for women to leave today. I don't really comment on that kind of stuff. But I believe it's made it so that men have to live by a higher bar now. And I think that's ultimately positive for them. They all say so anyway, guys like you, after the things are all done. So you spent some time sort of playing that game, trying to see how you could save your marriage.
Yeah. Well, I like how you said that. So in that time, I was delaying my own maturity by staying in that mindset where I couldn't live without the marriage still. I thought I needed the marriage to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, and I say that without critique. It's not
Right.
like you weren't waking up saying, I'm just going to be immature today. The issue here is that men don't know they don't know what they don't know. We don't know that there's another way to be, and we've all been indoctrinated our whole life to the idea that I'm not okay if there's not a woman in my life. I'm not whole on my own. I need somebody else to be a whole human being. And so we've all been spoon-fed a diet of codependency our whole life. It's in all of our music. It's in all of our films. It's all of our stories. Actually, a good bit of our stories, not all of them. And so most men are just playing out the script. And this is what makes it so hard, because a guy like Steven, and it's going to drive me nuts that I don't remember his last name. I will remember it. Like Steven or myself or Steve Horseman, because we're all very aligned on that same message. We sound absolutely nuts to tell a guy that he's going to be okay without a woman. But it's scary because he thinks he's hearing us say, you're not going to have a woman. This is what's a big challenge with making this jump is men have this fear. I was talking to another guest recently about this, that if I become okay without a woman, I'll never have one again. Right? Did you ever encounter this in that part of your group?
I don't remember
good.
that. Yeah.
That's good. Well, a lot of men, they're afraid to let go of the addiction to feminine validation because there's a part of them that worries that to let it go is to never have it, right? I'm glad you didn't experience that. Yeah. It's what gets guys stuck for a long time. So,
sure. Yeah.
So you process this. How long did it take you to kind of come to a place of just seeing it differently, of saying, well, maybe I really will be okay. Maybe this really is about me.
Cool. That didn't happen until after she first mentioned separation and divorce, really.
Okay, so
yeah.
You know what? You said August is when you came to me. I misspoke.
No, August is when she dropped the bomb on me.
Oh, okay. So it was August. Yeah. How long was it before she said, hey, I think I want a divorce or separation or whatnot?
It was a couple of months later when she mentioned separation.
Okay.
Yeah. I think October. I think that's when it was.
Did that move quickly or?
It did.
How did that feel?
It did. Honestly, when she first mentioned it, I was in a better place, but I still was not great. Yeah. I was still a little frantic at the time.
Probably pretty afraid of a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
she mentioned separation, and then I moved into the bedroom upstairs.
Okay, so in-house separation.
Yeah, well, that's what we started with. Yeah.
All right.
And at the same time, I was looking at other places to try and move. Now, I know there's a lot of advice out there to say that don't. If you're the guy and she wants a separation, then she should move out. And I get that, right? But for me, it worked out a different way.
I find, because I, again, talked to a lot of men in this boat, I don't find that there's a universally correct way to do that. I think it's nuanced. You need to know the legality behind that in your area, because definitely certain states within the United States treat that differently, and there could be ramifications. I personally wouldn't do anything without speaking with an attorney about it, but also it's challenging because depending on the circumstances, if a woman says she wants a separation and you're like, well, I don't want that, I don't want this, it can feel to her like you're not hearing her and what she needs and what she wants, which is oftentimes one of the reasons she's wanting to be in out of the relationship, is she doesn't feel like her perspective is at all appreciated, and that you always think about yours. But typically that man is also hearing you're a narcissist of some kind. And so that's the worst case. Like, that's the worst scenario to try to say, like, well, no, you move out. But there are plenty of valid scenarios where you might push back on that. It's like I said, I don't feel like you can be super formulaic about it. I would encourage a man instead to get clear on his value system, and then have a values-based reason that you're very clear about what your decision you're making.
Yeah. Yeah, it is situational, I would say.
So after a couple months, you decided to move out.
So yeah, after the short in-house separation, I was looking for places and I didn't find anything. And, where I could host my 4 kids comfortably. And so I told her that I couldn't find anything. And then the place where we work has had an apartment. And so what we decided to do was the nesting arrangement.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell people what that is for anybody who doesn't know what nesting is?
Right. So in a nesting arrangement separation, the kids stay in the house that you have together and the parents swap back and forth.
So you alternate like several days or a week at a time of the one of you going to the nest or the
exactly
the other place, I guess you could say.
Yeah, the apartment that we had.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a weird transition. That was
I bet.
really hard. One of the hardest parts of it, really.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of people who've done nesting, and they said they'd had its upsides, but they felt like it was difficult. It reminds me when people talk about it. There's this movie, and I don't remember what it is. It's like a sci-fi movie where these people were on like a spaceship in stasis, and they took turns being the people, asleep in stasis. And so these people, they shared an apartment. And so like when it was the man's turn, he would watch the videos his gal left for him. And so they were sharing the same space, but never there at the same time. And it was palpable. It was like really uncomfortable to watch these people who couldn't be together. Now these were people who were trying to be in a relationship, right? So just the idea of how weird that would be that you're never there at the same time. I wonder if you could dive into this a little bit because, as you know, one of the most challenging things for husbands who are also fathers when faced with this crisis is, oh my gosh, what about the kids? And I mean, you've got 4 small children, and this is most men's worst nightmare, other than maybe losing one of the children, the idea of like their family splitting up, and men are catastrophizing all kinds of really horrible outcomes with their kids, just despairing and feeling tortured. I wonder if you just tell us, like, what was this like for you to navigate that territory of thinking about your kids and thinking of, like the whole new housing and nesting? What was that like for you and for them?
Well, for me, I'll say it was pretty difficult. My mindset was always to make what I felt was the best decision for the kids. And, they were most comfortable staying in the home. And so I knew that they were going to be well taken care of. And they didn't quite understand it at first. But, it did take some getting used to. But after some time, it got to be a routine. And, I would talk with them about it, like what was going on if they wanted to know, or how I was feeling about it. And so in that way, we started to actually get a little bit closer.
So with the kids.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Yeah. So did they ever have any just real torturous moments that make you shudder to think about now? Or like, did it go better than maybe you imagined at the time, or worse, or about the same?
It went better than I thought it would, to be honest.
Okay.
The hardest part was actually telling them that there was going to be a separation.
Yeah.
That was the hardest point.
Yeah.
There were some emotional reactions, especially from my oldest daughters. But then after that, yeah, it got better.
Well, I have a couple of questions here. Like, what would you tell a man who is facing that? He has to have that conversation with his children about separation.
Yeah, that one's a hard one. I worked with my ex to kind of set the stage for that. We worked together. I think that was what was best for the kids, to be honest. That's us to be kind of united in this, even if I was still, feeling pretty bad about the whole situation myself.
Yeah.
I knew, my value was what was best for the kids. And there's not something that could be avoided. So, okay, well, let's do this the right way. And so it was just kind of telling them as gently as we could, and then, asking them if they have any questions about it. And, then actually I think we did some stuff together. I can't remember what we did after that, but we did it all together, me and my ex and the girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we ordered pizza or something, watched a movie.
Did you feel like she was making a mistake that, like, when it came to that day? The reason I'm asking you is I think this is one of the most challenging circumstances is some men are holding on to this, well, she's wrong. This is she shouldn't do this. Like, if she cared about the kids, if she loved the kids, how could she do this to the kids? And so a lot of times a man has kind of that going on, and it's my experience as a observer that then when they try to have that conversation together, it's altogether different, because there's like a palpable tension for the kids, for both of them, because he's like, well, I'm dead set against this. And it's almost like what's the right way to say this? I wouldn't say us versus them, but he can come into it with a little bit of self-righteous indignation, like, this is your mom. She's messing up our family unit.
I could see that happening. That was another thing that I had to work through beforehand, right? She's their mom, and I know that they love her, and there's nothing that I'm gonna say to disparage her in front of my kid. That's just not a value that I hold.
Yeah. And so did you think that day, at that moment, did you think she was wrong?
Did I think she was wrong
or making a mistake?
Yeah, probably at the time.
Okay.
In my own mind, yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, that's why I'm asking, is just, to demonstrate on some level that you were able to lead a conversation that you didn't necessarily want, you didn't necessarily agree with, but without disparaging your wife. That sounds healthy to me. It sounds like you decided to do the best you could with what you had.
Exactly. Yeah, and actually after that conversation, my ex said, wow, thanks for leading that.
Yeah. This is really challenging for a lot of men to come to understand, the idea of leading something that you don't want.
Yeah.
And it's tough to even talk about with men, because we do have to be authentic to ourselves. But when you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't want to continue, you have to understand that what I authentically want, I don't have to change that, but I do have to accept what the other person authentically wants. And this is tricky because most men are experiencing this in a part of their relationship where they are enmeshed, which means they're emotionally, psychologically, spiritually confused about what is me and what is her. And so they feel a certain degree of responsibility and or belief that she is their job to manage, not realizing it's that actually that leads to the power struggle and disillusionment in marriage, is the belief that your partner cannot lead themselves and they need you to manage their emotional state and vice versa. So it's really hard to walk a man through this idea that to understand that what you authentically want can only apply to you. That you have, despite whatever you believe to the contrary, we have no right to rule over another person's insides, whether it be a friendship or a partnership. Our covenant or our commitment to one another is not in such a way that we forfeit our agency and our leadership of self. And so you have to be a part of having a mature perspective as a man, is understanding that I might deeply love my wife. I might be deeply committed to her. I might really want this to work. But part of really, truly loving somebody in a way, it is to acknowledge that they are a free person, and that those kinds of commitments have to happen from a place of freedom to say yes, not compulsion, not manipulation, not threats, not fear. And a lot of men are scared of that because they don't know how to actually create an environment where a woman would be devoted to them. And so they instead need to lean on fealty or loyalty to a contract or to commitment, which people get really irritated at this idea that you can create a thriving relationship without this. And I'm not saying commitments don't matter. I definitely believe they do. However, I can't compel you to keep your part of a commitment as an adult. Like, that has to be on you. And so this is a hard understanding to come to for men in this spot. And yet the more you resist that, the more you try to tell other people what they ought to do, what's right for them, you're creating more disconnection. The more a man insists that a woman is wrong, that she should do it differently, that she should want differently, she'll just move further away from him. And I know this wasn't you. I'm just, I'm sharing this for a man listening who might be in a separated place, who's just really struggling to reconcile the difference between what he wants and what she wants.
Yeah, I knew that there was nothing it was out of my control. That was another thing from Peace and Control, is like focus on only what you can control.
Yeah. That's the problem with enmeshment, is most people who are enmeshed are confused about what's under their control. So they try to control their partner. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I knew that wasn't something that was under my control. Like she wants to separate, and it's going to happen. So might as well do this the best way I can.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So it sounds like you got separated. I'd love it if you explain where your dwelling ultimately came to be.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a unique setting that that's part of your story that's pretty interesting.
Well, so I mean, we stayed in that apartment doing the nesting thing for a while, and we tried couples counseling for a little bit after that, but that didn't work out.
Do you think she wanted to reconcile at the time, or did you drag her into that?
She actually initiated that.
Okay.
But I don't know. I can't really put words in her mouth about why it happened. But
sure.
But that ended up not working very well. And so then in December, she said that she wanted a divorce. So August to December was my timeline.
All right.
Yeah. And then in February, it got started, and that's close to the time when I first talked to you.
And where did you move? Did you stay with the nesting?
Yeah. So after the new year in January, I was like, okay, well, this divorce is happening. So I'm going to move. And I was comfortable doing that. Not every guy is going to be comfortable moving out of the house, right? It depends on your situation. Again, what the legal things are. A lot of people might have to stay in the marital home, until after you're divorced, or it's,
right,
in writing or something like that, right? But for my situation, I was okay to move. And what happened was the house across the street opened up, and so I got that house. And so at that point, I was living across the street from my old house.
Yeah, men couldn't fathom that, and it's not that I'm interested in that. Hey, you're moving across the street, but I want to get to the part where I talk about some transformation in your person.
Mm-hmm.
That you had to become a man who could be okay literally looking across the street at your former house life where your daughters are living when they're not with you. And I don't think a lot of men can fathom that. Like, how did you do that? That sounds really painful to most of us.
There were definitely painful moments.
Yeah.
Again, in my values of doing what was best for our daughters, it was the best thing for them. Okay. And so they've really enjoyed having that. So I'm actually really proud of getting that house. So yeah, that was a little hard. My ex seemed okay with it. She was positive about how that happened.
Be really convenient in a lot of ways.
It was really convenient. Yeah, whenever we switch off the kids, whenever they switch houses, it's just across the street. If they forget something, they can be like, okay, can they come over and grab that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So has been really nice in that regard. But yeah, it is difficult. It was really hard for a while seeing them out with my ex and, doing stuff and not being able to go over and take part in that.
Yeah, just not being
Those were some hard emotions around that. It was pretty sad.
Well, talk a little bit about how you started to experience just the tremendous personal growth you've had since then. Like, you're in this new place across the street from your family home, watching everybody pretty much have a life that you're not a part of in your moments when it wasn't your turn with your girls. And I think every father listening can appreciate the excruciating pain that probably was at times, but you got through it. And I know men are going to be wondering how, like, how did you do that? Right. So I want to start looking at what started to shift for you. Like, what were some aha moments maybe, or maybe they weren't aha, maybe they were just subtle, but where you stopped understanding the world one way and you started seeing it differently in a way that you can look out I assume your front window and watch maybe your daughters and your wife pull into the driveway or up to the house and see them go into that life that used to be yours, and it not cause you pain. Like, what happened?
Right. So soon after I joined Mentoring Men, Masterful Men, I took the RMM course with you. And what was the biggest thing for me was my relationship to my thoughts and what was going on, my thoughts and emotions, and what was going on in my head. So
what was the before? Tell me kind of what your from and to transition was with that. Like, how were you relating to those before you took Renewed Masculine Man?
Right. So before I took our Renewed Masculine Man, I had a lot of judgment for myself. My worldview was just in a negative place. All right. I don't quite know how to explain it, but
that's okay.
Yeah. My thoughts, I thought that I had to follow them. Like, I identified with all of my thoughts about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would it be fair to say that you were reactive in maybe your thoughts and feelings? Like, you thought something or felt something and then you just followed that around, and most people believe that is just how it is, right? Like,
right.
You think about it and then I feel that, and so I'm going to keep feeling that.
Like I would see my kids out, maybe across the street, and my thoughts would be like, man, I'm just feeling sad about this. So I'm a sad person, right? Or, well, they look like they're having fun over there. And so, maybe they don't think I'm as fun.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe that's a bad example.
No, there's no such thing. You're just explaining a person who just, I would say, like, lived in their thoughts, or what a therapist might call cognitive fusion, which is to not see the difference between your thinking and you. And so when you're experiencing that, you're fused in your thinking, and so you're not really evaluating if those thoughts are reliable, right? And this is a challenge, because if you have a lot of negative thinking and you're not really asking yourself the question, but is this reliable? Someone could say, is it true? I don't like to ask that, because I don't, it's a little bit trickier to do that, because we don't necessarily know what is objectively true.
Yeah.
But reliable, I think, is a better way. Is this thought really going to produce something good in my life? And if you don't know how to interrogate your thinking or think about your thinking, then you just tend to experience your thinking as though you have no choice about it, or to be reactive. And then basically you're victimized by your thinking. Does that sound like a fair way to describe how you were living?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So you might come to a conclusion like, well, this means I'm a terrible person. I mean, they're not usually that crystal clear. It's more that you feel sad, and you feel sad ultimately because you feel rejected, or you feel like there's something wrong with you. And then you just live in that feeling, and you might live that way for days sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, say
like
more.
I really screwed up this interaction. Gosh, I'm a screw up. Yeah.
Yeah. So some labeling of yourself there, some critical self-talk.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So the first part of Rooney Masculine Man that really helped me out was just noticing my thoughts, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
that was
learning to observe them.
That was a really big thing for me. And then, kind of analyzing them, like you mentioned, like, is that reliable? Right.
Yeah. And sometimes asking another question, I don't know if you would, maybe this wasn't your experience, but there's asking the question, is it reliable? And then also just saying, is there another way to look at this?
Right. Yeah.
And specifically another way to look at this that doesn't need me to have something wrong with me. You know, like another explanation. And guys get really upset about this. They're like, but aren't you just lying to yourself here? Because we're so used to believing that our thoughts about things are true, that they're objectively reality, not realizing you're actually living in your interpretations. And so if you believe your interpretations are objectively true, you are going to be a miserable human, because you don't realize your interpretations are woefully inaccurate, like woefully, right? There's just so much that we make assumptions about. So maybe you can unpack that a little bit, and what it was like to learn to not only think about your thinking differently, but how did you start thinking about you differently in that process?
Right. Yeah. So once I noticed that I could analyze my own thoughts, I got to a point where I read the book, The Untethered Soul.
Michael Singer.
Yeah. And I really resonated with that one. That one was a big influence on me.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I found a belief that really worked for me and who I really am.
Okay.
So
what had you believed before about who you were?
Wow. Yeah. What had I believed before? I thought I was all of my beliefs and actions and feelings. Right.
So how did that show up?
I didn't really know. I didn't even kind of analyze that at all.
What would you have said in the past about where your sense of value and worth came from?
It would be what I could provide to others.
Okay. So utility and function.
Yep.
Yeah. And so you started to learn to think about your thinking.
Yeah.
And to challenge some beliefs or spot some beliefs in there, and then challenge some of them. Specifically, it sounds like around some things about identity and who you are.
Yeah.
Where do you believe value and worth come from now, Andrew?
My value and worth are inherent in me.
Okay. I love that you use the word inherent. Yeah. Yeah. What does that have? Like, how has that impacted you to have that shift?
Well, the biggest shift that it gave me was, so if I'm the observer of my thoughts and my value and worth are inherent, then there was no way that I could not see myself as acceptable. Right.
So if you had a thought that was contrary to that.
Right. Yeah. I would analyze that and say, okay, well, that's not true.
Okay.
That's not reliable.
Yeah. You're basically talking about self-coaching, which I love it.
Yeah.
You started to not just notice your thoughts, but even do a little gatekeeping, it sounds like. Like some of them you're like, yeah, that's a rubbish thought. Okay.
Yeah. So instead of like, oh, wow, I really messed that up. I'm a screw up. It would be like, okay, yeah, I messed that up, but that's not me. You know what? I learned from this, and you know what? I'm looking forward to an opportunity to do better next time.
What did that do to your sense of acceptance?
Yeah. So that was the biggest thing for me, accepting who I am, my sense of acceptance.
Yeah, it sounds like beforehand, I mean, I'm extrapolating a little bit here, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like in the past, your acceptance of yourself was highly conditional and somewhat fragile because you had to basically be in a state where none of your thoughts happened to be accusing you of being unacceptable, and that was the only time you could feel good about yourself.
Right.
And then it sounds like you went through a shift where it sounds like you changed the rules for what allowed you to accept yourself.
Yeah. So once I was able to, see all those parts and how I was rejecting myself before and how I can accept myself now, that led to a lot of it, just acceptance of a lot more things.
Like what?
And just opened up. So, for instance, my ex started dating, and that was another thing that happened.
It's another man's like worst fear. A lot of guys, when I'm meeting them and they're separated or being separated, they're like, "Oh, I'll just fall apart. I'll just die if she's with another man. I can't bear it. I can't bear it." It's
yeah.
I mean, I have a lot to say about that subject, which I'll keep right now. But
so a lot of guys might say, "Okay, that's unacceptable." Yeah. And then it get all bent out of shape about it. I can completely empathize with that, but really, what those guys are probably feeling is that something is being taken away from them. If that happens,
let's talk about this. So there was a day where you pulled back the curtain on, some room in your house, and you notice a car in the driveway across the street in your old house. Your 4 daughters are inside. Maybe they're even playing in the front yard. And you see your wife, your ex-wife, maybe embrace another man.
Yeah.
So, has this ever happened?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, all right.
Maybe not the embracing outside part, but
but anything. It's not like you don't know, or depending on if that car was there overnight. I mean, there's so many scenarios that I could just see being something that a man would be undone to experience this. A lot of men. But what was your thought process in that moment? Like, how did you work through that kind of?
So I can understand, that okay, she's dating, fine, but the thing that got me was, okay, now my daughters are spending time with this other guy.
Yeah.
Right. That was the thing. Right. And I'm going to be honest, it took me a little while, but once I was able to peel that back, like you said.
I remember this time in your life. I remember our conversations at the time.
Yeah. So I would think about them playing with him and enjoying their time with him, and, projecting about what that means about me. Right. So if they're having a fun and loving time with him, that means that they don't love me as much. Right. That was the thought to begin with.
Yeah. What's that really about, by the way?
Is that really true? Yeah, it was thinking that I'm not enough.
Okay. So there's lots of layers of belief there, right?
Yeah, I won't get the love that I want, right? But then when I had to look at it objectively and just accept that this is not something under my control and it is something that is happening, I could make a different meaning about it. And so really, what does it mean if they're overplaying with this other guy? It means that they're overplaying with this other guy. And if it was anybody else, a friend of mine, or a neighbor, then I wouldn't be under this kind of distress, right? And they're having fun. Why would I want to take that away from them?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean anything about me and the love that they have for me.
Well, not until you give it that meaning.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You're actually demonstrating a very stoic idea, but that with some twist, right? I think people give stoicism a very bad name. I'm not saying you didn't feel your feelings, because a lot of people call that stoic, and I don't think that's really a fair description. You practiced what the great stoic thinkers believed and taught, which is you evaluated, it's the experience happening inside of me or outside of me, and it's the meaning I'm giving it. I'm giving my children playing with this other guy a meaning that's about something with my value and worth. Because that allows you to find out, well, I have some pretty feeble stories about my value and worth. So much so that if my children play with another man, my sense of self and identity is shot.
Right.
And so then you worked on that. And it sounds like you had to come to a place where you started to see your value and worth as innate, which means, okay, now it's not conditional. So them playing with other men can't alter my worth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So just kind of reverse engineering this a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And it sounds like you just coached yourself through these moments. Just once? Did you only have to do it one time?
Oh no, many, many times. I got triggered by a lot of different things that happened a lot of times. And I remember on one of the Iron Sharpens Iron calls, was feeling kind of low. And I asked, when are the triggers going to stop? And that was because I was having a rough time. And what I had to do, have some rituals around it a little bit, and eventually it just got easier.
Well, I know people listening to this are wondering, what was your ritual? What did you do? Right? What was your way of doing that?
Yeah, so it was just taking a pause, right, and thinking about, okay, where am I now? And can I have gratitude for where I am right now? Saying, okay, well, that's happening outside of me, and I'm right here, and there's nothing affecting me where I am. I would be in the car, for instance, and just kind of sit there and breathe.
And
I remember doing that.
Sort of work your way towards just becoming okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a process. I don't think it was articulated when you were in the Renewed Masculine Man, but I think you said you have my alien book, right?
Mm-hmm.
What to do when the aliens show up. But it's in there if you haven't gotten to it yet, called
Okay.
Take It to Papa, which is an acronym, which is pause and then assess, process, and address. And I won't break into that on this call because it's kind of, a lot to understand. But you basically just described a very organic, natural version of this, which was you paused. And in that place of pausing, gratitude is a superpower. I love that you express gratitude, because gratitude isn't just good to do, but gratitude, because it's a deliberate choice, starts reconnecting you with your power and agency, because you're making a choice to express gratitude, right? And usually hard emotions are coming from cognitively being caught in a story where we don't see ourselves as having choice, right? So the moment you express gratitude, you're flipping the script on the idea of choice. So that's what's really powerful. And then the assess was, you just walked us right through it. Am I okay right now? I'm in my car. Is anything really happening to me? And it sounds so rudimentary, but you're just kind of reassuring your brain that I'm not in an emergency. It feels like it, but I'm not.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Right? Because that's oftentimes, our brains are playing a lot of trauma, a lot of the past, a lot of our past hurts. Our emotions are thought to be predictive. And so your brain's like, well, this looks like I'm about to get shafted. This looks like I'm about to really lose. And so that moment is your ability to say, nope, we're actually okay. This is not, it's, and you're not dismissing or stuffing your emotions in this time. You're watching them saying, are they telling me something reliable? Or are they just predicting to try to keep me safe, but am I really in danger? No, I'm not. And then process is where you would kind of connect with your value system. What is true? Like who do I want to be right now? What do I value? What is true? And that's kind of where you do your self coaching about your worth, your value, whatever the moment calls for. And then address is when you take whatever actions are necessary because of the former. Okay. But yeah, you just talked us through basically
awesome.
your own version of that. And it's effective, but it's not something to do once. How many times do you realistically think you've had to do that before the triggers? I assume, maybe I should. I'm assuming the triggers don't have the impact that they used to, that you can look out across the street most of the time.
It was usually, exactly. I had a lot of practice living across the street.
Yeah, I bet.
From my old house. And I couldn't even put an estimate on it, really. Dozens.
Okay. 3 digits? You think at least 100?
It was always, I would get triggered about the same thing maybe a couple times, but then after that, it was like, okay, well, I've kind of dealt with this before, and this feels familiar. And how did I do this before? And so then it just got lesser and less each time.
Yeah. What happens most of the time with men that have gone through that, with the renewed masculine man who are learning this tool set, is they generally report it's not binary. It's not like it used to happen and it doesn't happen. It's that it gets the process gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and that matches what we understand from neuroscience right now too, which is neuroplasticity. You're retraining your brain how to experience something, and that as that training happens, just like learning to drive, it becomes more and more automatic and less noticeable, to the point where eventually you just move through the moment without any real upset, because all of those reps have trained you, right? They've trained your brain to do the things that you intentionally slowed down and taught it to do in those moments. That's what I find to work. And, some people can do that in a few times. If it's a really deep area of woundedness, it seems like sometimes it takes not just more reps, but sometimes we haven't gone deep enough into what we call peeling the onion. We haven't really assessed and processed deep enough to really kind of identify our, usually some form of shame or a judgment against ourselves. So it keeps coming back up because we haven't really healed. But yeah, dozens of times, pretty good. So, you still live across the street?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I still live across the street from there.
If you see a car parked in the driveway now and anything, you trigger back?
No, it's just a car.
Okay. And in fact, you even have some kind of new news, right? That would be another thing that most men couldn't bear to. Maybe you don't want to share this.
I'm sure there are a lot of guys who even after years might even say that. But no, there's a guy across the street.
Yeah. And you're not bugged by it anymore. Okay. Are you free to tell us what's going to happen with that situation shortly? You could say no.
With them, they're she's going to move now. Yeah. She's engaged.
Okay.
now.
Yes. It's just another thing that so many men would say, oh, that's just a total kick to the balls.
She's engaged now.
Are you?
No, actually, I was prepared for that to happen. And
okay.
Yeah. So, I thought it would come, and, I got the news and I thought it would have been worse, but she's doing what she thinks is best for her. It's not affecting our kids. And so if she's happy, then that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't sound like you're very perturbed by it all.
No, I mean, she and I, we have a good relationship still. We work together really well on a lot of things.
Which is good because you're going to be in each other's lives the rest of your lives, most likely, as long as you have 4 daughters.
Yeah, exactly. So we still share, things that we think about with the girls and what to do with them, and planning things, making sure we're updated on what's going on. So yeah, we're still really good co-parents. She's a good co-parent.
Okay. You feel like you've really established pretty good boundaries for yourself with that, so that you're a great co-parent, but you're not like bleeding over into like husband territory or partner territory.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. I think you mentioned this before too, right? If like somebody doesn't want me as their husband anymore, then why should I give them husband energy?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is kind of a boundary that I have for myself.
It doesn't usually happen in a situation like this, Andrew. It's usually when a man is still facing divorce, he's under this belief that if he's super nice and he shows up every time she says she needs help, so she says jump and I say how high, he's telling himself a story where that'll show her what a great guy I am and how she's lucky to have me, and it'll be my path to getting back into the relationship. But it's just complete horseshit, to be blunt. But it's also manipulation, because it doesn't accomplish that, first of all, and it's not giving because that's who you love to be. It's giving because you're trying to get her to change her mind. But it tends to be born from desperation, and desperation is, you never want to be a desperate partner, especially as the man. That's just, I don't think anybody is served when you're in a relationship and one of you is desperate. So, and when men typically are in that spot and they're desperate and they're doing that stuff, they usually are doing all kinds of things, right? They're playing Mr. Handyman, Mr. Johnny on the spot. Sure, I'll change your oil. Sure, I'll go put new tires on the car. Sure, I'll give you thousands of dollars for your emergency need. And so he's playing all these spousal support roles, even though she said, I don't want you as a spouse.
Right.
And then what ends up happening is he does see that car in the driveway. There's a new man, and he's staying overnight. So clearly they're intimate, and that guy is livid, and he's livid because he was doing the same kind of transactional thing where if I make all these deposits into the Goodwill account to show her what a great man I am, she's going to just fawn over me and want to be together. Nope, not at all. Not at all. And, then he'll basically have a massive amount of resentment. And then he'll start telling himself a story about her that is really off color. She was taking advantage of me. She was using me. And you know what? That's unknowable. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. That's not for me to say. But that's when a man spirals into hate. He will become a villain and he'll hate her. And so what men don't see is how quickly they said that they were like, they can't get on without her. They love her. They're desperate for her. And they go from there to hatred, just like that, which is evidence. Yeah, see, it wasn't love. It was an addiction. And love and addiction, two totally different things. So yeah, that's what you're referring to. A lot of men go through that. And I know it wasn't your story, right?
No, it wasn't mine at all.
But a lot of men do that. It's a very hard thing to get those kinds of men to like move in a positive direction. They are what I would call addicted lovers. Not just me. That they're a person who doesn't know how to be okay without a woman, so they'll basically sacrifice anything to be with her, and it doesn't work. It's a great path to being a miserable human being later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably did some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's normal for all of us to be a little bit like desperate, right?
Yeah.
But you moved out of it into a healthy way, and so here's your ex-wife now is going to be moving in with this guy, and that could be a whole landmine, set of landmines for you, but it doesn't sound like it's impacted you.
No, not. It's really, I'm great with it. The girls had a rough time thinking about it, but I think they've grown to accept that that's going to happen and are okay with it.
How's your relationship with them these days? Do you like it?
Yeah, my relationship with my kids is great now. It's 1,000% better.
Are they all suffering for all of this?
No, actually, it's not what I thought was going to happen at all.
Say more about that.
I thought that they would be sad and miserable because they can't be with both their parents all the time.
Yeah.
But no, we have so much better connected relationship now than.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it was the work that I did on myself. I think that's ultimately what it came down to.
Can you connect those dots a little bit? Like, how did the work you did on you turn into a better connection with them?
Right.
When you're with them.
Right. So if I used to be really reactionary, right? When something would happen. But now I can actually kind of see it for what it is, kind of why they're feeling the way that they're feeling, or I can at least just kind of be curious about it, which before I wouldn't have been able to do.
Do you mean to say that you find yourself sort of applying those same standards of acceptance, like, well, towards them? So in a way that it sounds like you're not judging what they're doing, and you're just leaving some space for, like, well, who knows what's going on here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have one daughter who's can be a handful sometimes, like maybe throw a tantrum every once in a while. But now I can kind of slow down and just talk with her about what's going on. And whereas, like I said before, I'd have been like, this is irrational. Why are you doing this? Yeah.
Sounds like you've discovered some things about the feminine in this process.
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So you sound like you're more present for them.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, being present with them.
What's it feel like?
What's it feel like?
Yeah.
Oh, it's really rewarding now. Fulfilling, really, to be there for them. Like, really, to really be there for them.
Well, let me ask a clarifying question about that. If you could go back and spend 100% of the time with them 5 years ago, or half the time with them now as a present man, which would you choose?
I would choose how it is right now, 100%.
Okay, interesting. So it must be that there's more quality to it. And it's probably even fair to say quantity, because if you're not present, are you really spending time with somebody?
Yeah, are you really there? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your body's there, but I mean, are you there?
Right. Yeah. That's how it was before. Yeah, my body was there, but I wasn't really. And now, I built up these, connected relationships with them, and they're just so much more open with me about what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so much better.
So, would you change anything about this divorce having happened if you had the opportunity to?
Would I change anything about the divorce?
I know that's a really hard question to answer.
It is, right? No, and I know that's what I believe. I would not change anything. Yeah, there are a bunch of like coulda, woulda, shouldas, but I'm exactly where I am supposed to be right now.
Yeah, that's
if none of this would have happened, I would still be that miserable person who is just drifting through life.
Yeah, maybe. Or who knows what would have happened, needed to happen. I have found it really effective to understand that, things are necessary for us. I don't claim to understand it, but I've even seen in my own story, it's really helpful for me just to say, well, it must have been necessary. And to actually be thankful that I'm glad I had a shift from what did happen, because what else would have needed to be necessary for me had I not woken up to some things,
Yeah.
It's hard to think about.
I mean, yeah, like would I be conscious of what's going on and aware of
Yeah.
things that are happening if I didn't have that conflict that happened, right?
Yeah. So, listen, I have this next question, and it's not to try to get you to offer accolades or praise to what we do. It's a sincere question. You've already sort of answered it, in that you were part of Husband Help Haven for a while at Peace and Control. Overall, just like what role did community play, coaching? And the reason I'm saying that is because one thing I'm aware of as a host is that men don't really know, like, I mean, they hear your story of transformation, but they don't know, like, what kind of time did it take? What kind of financial investment did it take? Like, is this person paid tens and tens of thousands of dollars to have this outcome? And so I've been trying to ask people lately, or just kind of point out, realistically, what kind of time and life changes did you have into this? And if you want to talk about investment, you can, so that men understand, like, what each man's story was like. Because, for example, we had a guest a couple days ago who I don't think has ever had more than a $50 a month investment in their transformation, and still had a pretty cool outcome, right?
Yeah.
So I just want men to...
Jake?
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, I contacted him and he helped me get into this group.
Yeah, that he's another Peace and Control person. So yeah, like what... I
didn't want to out him or anything.
No, that's okay. That's okay. He's outing himself on that episode, which at the day we're recording this, it comes out publicly tomorrow.
Okay.
But also just like, all together, like what kind of stuff, like what role did community, brothers play in this? Like, just anything you want us to know about, like, what you employed to get where you are.
Right. So yeah, when I joined Mentoring Men, Masterful Men, there were other guys who were going through similar things. And yeah, they were a really good sounding board and would lovingly challenge some of the things that I would come up with, like in the thoughts and beliefs that I had. And that was so important to my development. I would say that was one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
And, part of that was going through the course with guys too at the same time. I think that was really helpful.
Yeah, you made a lot of use out of the group calls. Some people don't. And it's always a little sad, because I believe that's the most beneficial, probably the most beneficial part.
Yeah.
Is the relationships that happen there.
Yeah. Sven, I'm an introvert. And so it was really hard for me to start doing those kind of things.
Yeah.
But it was invaluable, really. I would just show up, just show up
mm-hmm.
and be vulnerable.
But not forced, but meaning
no.
I think we try to be sensitive to, a lot of men come from an introverted background and extroverted. And so one of the dances to do as a host of those meetings is to try to make sure the extrovert doesn't dominate the meeting, but that the introvert doesn't hide.
Right. Yeah. So those group calls were actually exactly what I needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you did a little bit of one-on-one, but I don't think it was a massive amount.
Yeah, I've done some one-on-one also.
Okay.
And that's really helpful to get direct feedback and kind of personal care in that way.
Yeah. Especially for introverts who maybe might struggle a little bit to say everything in a group setting.
Yeah, one-on-one was always a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and you've been a member of the community now for a good long while, I guess.
Yeah, 3 years now. Right? Yeah. And the renewed masculine man took me, I don't know how long it was, almost a year maybe. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, depends on how you approach it. I've actually removed the timing from it, meaning you could do it as fast as 6 months, but I have renamed the months to units, because men start arbitrarily judging themselves by, I'm taking too long. So I realized that, they're already struggling with shaming and judging themselves constantly. So I've tried to remove some of the metrics and just give them a new way to measure themselves by just saying, like, look, it'll take you as long as it takes you,
Right. Yeah,
stuff in
because
that.
a lot of guys coming into the community might be like, well, I want to get this done so I can feel okay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But there's
I cringe when that
really
happens.
no timeline on it.
Yeah.
It can be a hard adjustment for some guys, I think.
Yeah, that's true. The timeline is the timeline, like this is
Right.
one of the growth points for us as men is realizing that it's one of the things we have to grow out of in our journey to maturity is the belief that life is up ahead, that it's up there. Like the reality is if you can't learn to be okay today, when you get to tomorrow, it's not going to be any different. Like you have to break your addiction to the idea that the future is where life is. And so that's one of the reasons I don't try to offer a 21-day or a 30-day fix, because that very thinking is flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes some time for a man. And it usually is about a year before it actually sinks in and the man says, oh, I have to be okay today, don't I? And he knows how to be, right? Because any belief that I've got to hurry up and get to tomorrow is a way to get to your grave really quickly. And be in agony when you get there, because what you end up not realizing in a lifestyle like that is you are literally wishing your life away by focusing on tomorrow. And it will come one day
Yeah.
that tomorrow or today is it. That's it. It's your last day. And you'll feel like, well, shit, I haven't lived yet. Yeah, you didn't, because you kept living for tomorrow. So that is kind of intentionally baked into the program I've created so that men, they learn how to slow down. That's probably one of the harder parts about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about aha moments before, but it wasn't until a lot later that I realized that those aha moments don't come with all of just the basic steps. You got to work on just the basics for a long time, and then those will come, right?
Yeah.
Those big leaps.
Yeah, they don't come because you try hard to have them.
Right. Yeah.
It's actually it's when you stop, which is, again, lots of paradox. And I appreciate how hard it is. I mean, it took me most of my life to experience some of that transformation. And I kind of laugh when people are like, this is, I've been at this 7 weeks, and I'm like, man, I spent 7 years in the pit of hell for myself. So I'm always like really impressed when somebody even a year later is like, I'm living an entirely new way. It's like, sucker. Yeah. So what's life like now for you in ways that matter to you? Like, how have you've told us about your relationship with your ex, which I think is cool, and your children.
Yeah.
What about other relationships, romantically, or even colleagues, parents? What else has changed for you in life?
Well, a lot of all that other stuff comes about from my relationship to myself, and it was kind of prioritizing what, filling my own cup is what we call it, right? So I, was started doing things that I thought, and I believe, like, fill my cup, like singing, right? So I always wanted to join another group, so I started doing that, and so just being open to those kinds of things and relationships have been really fulfilling for me. And so, and I'm also dating. Yeah.
You have been for a while now, right?
And for almost 2 years now. Been
so
dating.
How long were you not with any kind of female relationship? Because I think this is worth highlighting.
Well, officially divorced to dating was a year, but I don't know if you'd call that a relationship with a woman, what we had at the end.
Well, no, what actually I think is really what I wanted to highlight here is, because you're a great example of what I would say is taking an effective route, which is you didn't rush back into a relationship with a woman. You learned to be completely okay and to build a great life for yourself that was not defined by a relationship with a female. And that, from my observation, has allowed you to have a thriving relationship now with a woman, because she's not your source. Like, you've learned how to be you,
mm-hmm.
and how to source your own strength from inside instead of like what a lot of men do, Andrew, in your spot is they just, the moment it becomes clear to them that the woman they were with is going to be divorced, they just start looking for another.
Yeah.
That is a huge red flag for a man, as far as like, if you don't know how to be okay without a woman, you really need to stop and learn to be okay. Or the probability you're going to be in the same spot is extremely high.
Right. Yeah. And so setting that foundation with a relationship with myself was really what I was working on. To be honest, when I started dating, I wasn't even looking to start dating.
Yeah.
But I was open to the idea.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was it for you? Like, I mean, you hadn't dated in a long time. So like, how was even the dating experience different than your last time?
Right. Well, for me, so I know there's advice out there that, like when you want to start dating, then you should be dating like 3 women at a time. And that just didn't align with who I am. That's just not who I am. So yeah, I started dating a woman, and then, it's been going really well.
Was it harder? Was it easier? What was different even in the dating experience?
It was different in the sense of that I just knew that if it wasn't going to work out, that I would be okay. And so from that place, I could be open and just honest and authentic with this other person, and just, trying to be present and connect with them. Yeah. Whereas before, like you said, the addicted lover, I think that was me. Like,
yeah,
I got to do all this stuff to win favor.
Yeah, the big
try to impress.
Yep.
Right. But if I'm coming from this grounded place of just knowing who I am, then if that's not something that they like, then that's okay.
Yeah. Right. And this isn't, just for somebody listening, this doesn't mean that you're emotionally like, what's a good word? That you're emotionally cold or numb, or, to use the word inappropriately, stoic. I mean, I know you to be differently than this. That's not what's giving you strength. It's not giving you strength that you're keeping this new lady at a distance.
Oh no, not at all.
Okay, yeah, say more about that. So,
yeah, actually, I was more open about what happened to me with her than I ever thought I would be with anybody else. Yeah. So really, just building a friendship.
Do you feel like how about your relationship with your emotions? Like, how does that feel to you now, or how would you describe it?
Yeah, when emotions come up for me, it is a red light, kind of like, okay, wait a second. So let's check what's actually happening here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, would it be fair to say they're informative now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, well, okay, what do I really need now? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Have I had enough sleep?
Yeah. I love it.
Sleep is such a big one for me. Like,
yeah, for sure.
If I haven't had enough sleep, then
that's the foundation for our well-being. You could be the most squared away person otherwise, but a bad night's sleep can ruin the most mature man quickly. And sometimes just having the maturity to say, I don't think I slept very well.
Am I taking care of myself? Like, that's the first thing I would check.
Okay. Well, I'm curious what you experience now, just one or two things, if you could think of something that you just never thought would be possible. At any point, although it could be during the divorce, but just what have you been really surprised pleasantly to be able to experience?
What am I pleased to be experiencing now or surprised to be experiencing now? I always thought I would have the same worldview that I had before. I know it's completely changed about other, well, just everything, actually. What's going on in the world, why other people do what they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would hope that you would mean that it's been more positive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you have a different worldview.
Yeah. Things.
Did you get that from somewhere? And that's a little bit of a leading question because I do wonder, will people hear that and think that this community is giving people worldviews? How would you describe that? Like, where did your new worldview come from?
Well, no, that was a completely internal process.
Okay.
And so once I let go of the judgment on myself and was able to accept myself, I can see that in everybody else.
You mean you could see people judging themselves?
Well,
or
if I
one
know
another?
if I know who I am and who I really am, then I can see kind of who other people really are. Like if I stop judging my behavior and thoughts and actions, then I can do that for other people. And I think that's been a game changer.
Do you feel like that has given you like a more pleasant disposition towards other people?
Yeah.
Like what has that done in how you see other people?
I would say just connecting. It's been a lot more connecting with other people in the world, because then I can be curious about what happens, what's going on inside of them.
Do you feel like you were like more cynical or something before?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That, that person is really dressed. Oh, they have green hair. Why would they do that? Like, who is that person?
Okay. Now, some men hear something like that and they think, oh, so you're just you're a pushover now with no scruples?
Absolutely not. No, I have my boundaries, and it's because I know who I am now. I have
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So you're more clear about you, more clear about other people, and there's a lot of freedom in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
You don't realize how much your interpretations you're living in.
Yeah.
Our brains are so quick to draw connections between things, and we're so quick to believe them to be objectively true. Well, you know why they said that, right? You know why they did that, right? You know why they have that color hair, right? And then you just accept it as trustable. And it's not. Yeah. It's assumptions, right? And that what they say about when you assume.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you make an ass of you.
Make an ass of you and me. Yeah.
So let's flip this around. What do you wish you had understood sooner, if there is anything?
Yeah. What I wish I had understood sooner. It was definitely that the work that I should have been doing was on me and not trying to save a marriage. Yeah. I thought I was doing the work on me for a long time before I joined this community, but really I was just trying to save the marriage. And that's where I would have liked my focus to have been more just on that. And I can understand why guys can't let that go sometimes, because it's still there, feel like it's still there.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
if I just do this one thing,
it's part of our growth. I mean, I don't see it as a judgeable thing, meaning it's just part of the human experience when you're moving from one thing to another thing. All transformation is a from and to. Mm-hmm. And the from that we're coming out of has a characteristic where you believe that life is happening outside of you. And so naturally, if you believe life is outside of me, you try to control things outside of you. And it's a completely new thing to shift to, wait a minute, life is inside of me. And so it's quite natural and normal in your old state to just be focused on things like relationships, circumstances. Like I have to win the lottery, I have to get a new job, she has to change her mind, my political team or side has to win the election, my football team needs to go to the Super Bowl. Like when you're living in that way of thinking, you're constantly looking outside of yourself for change. And I don't think it's that it's bad or wrong. It's just not effective because there's nothing you can do about all that stuff. So that shift is very abrupt for most people. It takes some time.
Yeah.
But when you know what it's like to live with peace because you're not looking outside yourself, there's a natural thing that says, yeah, what would have life been like if I had done this for 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, me too. If someone were listening who's feeling stuck, who they're like, hey, man, Andrew's story sounds just like mine. What would you tell them? Just like, what is the next thing that they should do?
Let's see. So if they're feeling stuck right now, the next thing that they could do is
something they could do before bedtime.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah. What could they do? Well, just make a decision of some kind, honestly.
All right. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Why? What does that do?
Just deciding something moves you forward, right?
True.
Yeah. So if you decide to do something, it could be something mundane even, right? But like, okay, well, this has been on my plate for a while. I'm going to decide to do this now.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be about a relationship or anything to do with what's going on with your marital status or anything. It could be like, well, the car really needs to be washed right now. I'm going to go wash the car.
I love it. I think that's profoundly simple and excellent counsel. And I would say, just to unpack the why, because it sounds like, well, what good is washing my car going to do? What it does is it gets your brain out of a story of stuckness and powerlessness, because stuckness and powerlessness is all living in a story where you don't have decisions. Mm-hmm. And so the way to start feeling good and moving in a powerful direction is you have to reconnect with your power. And in humans, that means making decisions. And so even making a decision to, like, if you're sitting down, to stand up, and, if you're standing up, to sit down. I mean, every little decision you make gets that momentum going. It overcomes the inertia of a self-limiting belief, because the self-limiting belief says you have to stop here. You can't go further. And so, just reconnecting with your decisions it's quite powerful. So, we've known people who've said, like, hey, it might just be okay, brush your teeth. Okay, make your coffee. And if that's what you have to do, so be it. What you find, though, is when you do that, it builds up something in us. And the next thing you know, you have to make maybe a decision about talking to an attorney or getting a new place to live. And you do it because you recognize, well, nobody's going to do it for me. And I don't want to be stuck because I don't like how it feels to be stuck. I want to keep moving.
Right.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah, it is really powerful to be able to make decisions like that.
All right, last question. What did we not talk about that we should have?
Wow, what did we not talk about? What did we not talk about? We touched on a lot of things.
Yeah, or another way I ask this question is, an hour from now, and you're like just remembering this conversation, what are you going to say? I should have said such and such.
Yeah. I can't think of anything, honestly.
That's good.
Yeah, we talked about so many things, dating, triggers. I guess we didn't really touch on the divorce process. And I think with me, that process was really easy for me, actually.
Did you use a mediator or an attorney process or what?
Yeah, it was a what do you call it? Yeah, a mediator. It was a lawyer who was a mediator.
Yeah.
And it was really easy for us. We split everything 50-50. We worked together to do the whole thing.
And do you think it was easy because of the 50-50, or do you think it was easy just because the internal work that you were doing?
I'd say a lot of the internal work that I was doing did help, really. And that, that helped us, or me at least, be able to work with her as a team.
Okay.
Even though we were getting divorced. I know that's weird, right?
Yeah. I think you make a good point here, in that if you're not feeling emotionally hurt, it's easier to have productive conversations that are just about business, because you're not making it about anything but business. And you're fortunate, I can tell you as a person on this side of things, you're fortunate that it sounds like your ex was likewise, because if any partner is really hurt, they can really use the divorce process to inflict pain and suffering on the other person as kind of a passive-aggressive way, or sometimes just aggressive way to injure.
A lot. That can depend on your soon-to-be ex's disposition too, right? So
you're very fortunate that way, but also, I think you probably also reaped what you sowed there a bit, in that.
Well, she felt safe enough to work with me that way, and have productive conversations.
So there really wasn't a lot of back and forth and adjustments to be made.
No, just a few, really.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story with us. Of course, anybody who wants to know you further can certainly connect with you inside the Masterful Men community, where they could not just watch this on video, but also get to know you. I think that's an especially cool part of what we're doing on this podcast, is telling men's stories, but also so that the guests can build relationships with listeners who might be in a similar spot. That would be really awesome.
Yeah, I would love that
for men. Especially, I say that a little selfishly, because my story didn't end in divorce. And I think a man like you with this story has far more weight, I guess you could say, gravity. I don't know what the right word is here, but you have a lot more to offer a man whose path is going that way than I do. I'm certainly happy to share my materials with him, but I'm not going to have as much effectiveness as you would with that. So I hope men listening to their stories unfolding like this feel like they can get to know you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Thanks again, brother.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks, Ben.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in to the Masterful Man podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're ready to break free from stuckness, build unshakable confidence, and lead your life with unstoppable purpose, I invite you to take the next step. Join a community of men who are committed to growth, challenge, and real transformation. Learn more at www.masterful.men, because the life you want starts with the man you choose to become.